Yeah, I'm excited to talk Bills and how even keeled everybody's been about this draft class. No one's yelling at anybody. No one's yelling at me because I said Maxwell Hairston might need to improve his tackling. Everything's just even keeled and nice. I posted like 15 clips of Max Hairston just excelling in coverage. And then I posted one fucking cut up of tackles from him. I still would have taken Trey Amos at 30. Somebody said that meant I voted for Kamala and called me a cuck.
To another edition of the Rockpile Report podcast. I'm your host, Bill, season ticket holder Drew Gear. That's my producer, Chris Kruger, and one of our favorite guests. And by favorite guests, I mean one of the few people who like genuinely gets a kick out of coming in here and watching us be idiots behind these microphones. Mr. Anthony Prohaska from Cover One. Anthony, it's good to see you, brother. Cheers.
Thanks for having me. Cheers.
Of course. The weather sucks. You know, we've all got a lot of stuff going on in our personal lives, but it's nothing a little whiskey sour can't fix, right?
Oh, there's nothing a whiskey. Well, there are things a whiskey sour can't fix, but most things can be fixed with whiskey sour. That's roughly 93.4% of why I come here is for the whiskey sour and the pizza. One shout out to One Pie Pizza. Thank you guys as always for supplying that. And yeah, I'm excited to talk Bills and how even keeled everybody's been about this draft class on the Bills side, on the fan side. Everybody's just like, cool, man, football. No one's yelling at anybody. No one's yelling at me because I said Maxwell Hairston might need to improve his tackling. Everything's just even keeled and nice.
It's so much fun when you watch, like, because I remember, I'm old enough to remember a day when the NFL draft just happened on a Saturday afternoon.
Yes. I used to get together with my friends and it was the whole day thing. And then like some of it used to be on Sunday, but it was mainly just like all day Saturday.
I remember there was a guy, his name was Jim Eddy, which already tells you he's a problem because he has two first names. Jim Eddy was doing consumer debt collection with me at a podunk agency in Woodlawn, New York, out of the Gateway building. And Jim Eddy was 62 years old with an 11-year-old son and a 27-year-old
wife,
baby mama.
Wow. No judgment.
And this guy ruled. Like nobody knew how to party like Jim Eddy.
Jim Eddy.
So I remember working a 8 to noon shift on a Saturday with Jim Eddy and him looking at me and just going, I'm feeling dry. Is there a bar somewhere we can go watch this draft? And so we went to J.P. Fitzgerald's in Hamburg. Oh, and that was the year that the Bills didn't get Ladane. Was it who did we take? It was the year that we drafted Marshawn Lynch. And I think
Adrian Peterson.
Was that the Adrian Peterson year? Mm-hmm. Because I remember in back-to-back years, it was like Adrian Peterson went 2 picks before us.
Lynch was like 13th or something, and Peterson was like 8th or 9th or 10th to Minnesota. Yeah. It was close.
And then there was another year where there was the tight end that went to San Francisco.
Vernon Davis.
Oh,
yeah.
And that happened like a couple picks before us.
Yeah, Vernon Davis went like 4th or 5th. He was one of those first dudes who like lit up the combine, and it shot him up the boards like crazy.
And then he got yelled at by a guy who looked like Master Roshi from Dragon Ball Z.
Good reference.
I mean, tell me that's not what he looked like when he was coaching the Sam. Can't win with him.
Can't do it.
With his squinted eyes and his glasses on.
I've never thought of that. That's a fair comp. Master Roshi is Mike Singletary.
So it's just the concept of like, this all used to happen in a day. And me and Jim sat there and just got bombed in the middle of the day. And then like people thought he was my dad, which was fun.
That's a good time.
Like people were like, oh, you're in your early 20s. This guy, there's a 40-year gap here. Clearly, he's your father.
Clearly, he's your dad.
So like that experience to what the draft has become now is wild. But also social media has changed the way we watch and experience the draft. Oh, God, yeah. Because here's someone like yourself who watches a lot of film. You do a lot of film study. You explain. You have a whole show over there, Disguised Coverage, over at Cover One, where he breaks down film and really gives nuanced explanations for what people are seeing and maybe misunderstanding. The problem is that there's no allowance for nuance inside this vacuum that becomes the 3 days of the NFL draft. Man. It's the hottest of hot takes. It's ACLs tearing left and right from knee-jerk reactions. And if you go out there and try to say a salient thing, everyone else they just declare you a moron. Am I right or wrong?
That's fair. It's really been the last two have. I mean, it takes a lot for something to like bother me on like social media because it's social media. I don't care. But last year, I remember I posted my evaluation of Keon Coleman. And Keon Coleman was my wide receiver 9. I thought he had a wide variance of outcomes. And I said it as much. I was like, here's a thread of his evaluation. And I linked I had 12 or 13 clips because I had done a bunch of pre-draft work. And all I did was get yelled at from both sides. The one side was like, you're way too nice. This guy sucks. And the other side was like, I can't believe you said he has anything to work on. He's so raw. Like, you're too mean. And I just got yelled at nonstop. And then this one, I posted like 15 clips of Max Hairston just excelling in coverage. And then I posted one fucking cut up of tackles from him. And all I did was say, like, here's a video from 2024 of his tackles and tackle attempts, like, posted without commentary. I didn't say, like, oh, this is a problem, this is good, this is bad.
You and Eric clearly have an agenda, and I will not tolerate this slander.
And that's all it was. Like, oh, you guys had this agenda. People kept jumping at me. And I get it, like, Eric was a little more, like, direct with it. But I didn't have time to go through with everybody. So I literally was just like, here's this video. Because I like people to draw their own conclusions, especially for something that I can tell people are on the opposite ends of the spectrum. So I was literally like, essentially like, here's a bunch of tackling stuff. Decide for yourself.
Hey, I have, I'm not watching that, and I already have my conclusion.
That's exactly it. It led to the point that somebody told me because I posted that video that somebody was like, said that meant I voted for Kamala and called me a cuck. And I don't know how the fuck that happened. Oh no, I'm sorry. That was the result of me saying I still would have taken Trey Amos at 30. Like, it was just like, what the fuck with like this, and it was just so funny to me. Like I screenshotted it and sent it to my wife. I was like, what do you think this was a result of? And she's like, oh, what did you say? I was like, I said I wanted another player instead of the player the Bills took. And it's just, there's no pleasing anyone. To your point, it's the knee-jerk reactions, positively and negatively. Social media has just fanned the flames to everybody becoming like hyper emotional, good or bad. If you post anything that isn't sunshine and rainbows, you're tearing a guy down. Give him a chance. Why are you being so mean? And if you post good things, oh, how come you're being such a homer? Why aren't you evaluating this guy? And it's just, oh, I can't believe you said Max Hairston needs to work on his tackling. Like, why are you tearing him down? I'm like, did you check the 15 other clips where I showed how good he is in coverage and why he's going to be good? And then people are like, oh, no, sorry, guess I missed that.
It was literally Eric Turner who made the point. You know what? You don't have to worry about the tackling if he covers well enough.
A good point, yeah.
So but there again, there's no room for that sort of discourse in the 3 days that are the NFL draft.
To the point, to Chris's point, people already made up their mind. Like, how dare you, rabble. It's very much like you took our job, South Park style. But I didn't take anyone's job. I just gave an evaluation that had a lot of positives and like 1 or 2 or 3 negatives.
See, this is where I feel like people like me, like, I just surf this with these waves. You know why? Because I just don't say anything. I don't care. Yeah. I get to just be an idiot who I just get to like dead man float on top of all of this nonsense. And then finally it all calms down and I'm like, man, that was weird. That's a whole thing that happened.
Man, you guys saw what happened out there? And I'm like, wow, I'm drenched from the waves. I'm soaked. You're like, did you know there was a storm outside?
You're soaked and exhausted. Yeah. And I'm just like, man, that was crazy. Huh?
You want a quesadilla? I just made one. They're delicious. I'm like, get out.
So it was a whole thing that happened. And obviously there's a lot of facets of the draft class we're going to talk about tonight. But I think the first one and kind of my broadest takeaway after watching the 3 days of the draft and really taking in a lot of the stuff that's out there, because this is what I've learned in almost 10 years of doing podcasts. You have a lot of people who will come in and tell you everything they know. And I've learned that I know absolutely nothing. I've learned that I'm an idiot. So I instead wait for the things to happen, and then I go research the things that happened, and that's how I develop my opinions.
Know yourself and stick to the brand. I like it.
This is it.
Except when we sign Laviska Shenault.
Oh,
man,
yeah.
That's still one of my, that's a core memory for me.
Fire that right into the sun.
That was so great. I watched Chris's face light up, and I was like, what's about to happen? And just, man, so good. So good.
So what I walked away from this with is there's a lot of people pissed about the direction the team took. And I guess I want to say to all of you who are yelling and ranting and raving, I'm too lazy to go back and do, although I've done this to people in the past to hilarious result, If you say anything and it actually bothers me, or I actually like Chris has seen this, Nate Geary's seen it, Greg's
This
seen
is where
it.
Drew goes back 6 years on your Twitter timeline.
I don't say anything.
To find and
then what I do is
just breaks everything down like 6 years ago and brings it back to the present tense.
And then all of a sudden you're like, well, wait a minute. I'm like, oh no, you're this idiot. You don't speak.
I found this on your time.
No, I know this, and this about you. You sound like the dumbest person I've ever heard. Like, ever heard say anything in public, you should probably go away.
Heard say anything.
And they do. And so, like, Nate was like, it's diabolical. Like, I found a picture of some guy wearing, like, the tightest leather pants in a photo that he thought was funny to tweet 5 years ago. And I just brought it back to the conversation. I was like, you don't get to call Nate Geary a girl when you dress like this. And he was just like, that was old. Doesn't matter. It's nobody forgets. I'm literally the kid from Superbad.
People don't forget.
People don't forget, man. But you better get out of here.
People don't forget.
And he did. So it's this idea that all of you better go back in time and delete every single tweet from the week following our loss to the Kansas City Chiefs, where you all derided this team for once again failing and blaming Sean McDermott and saying, everything about our defense sucks in the playoffs and we couldn't get it done and we're missing another Super Bowl because of this defense's failure. They heard you. They heard you speak. And then you went out and did the thing. And now you're mad about it. Because like most people who are overreactionaries or prisoners of the moment, like I am, you get trapped in the newest thing that you're emotional about. So you forgot already how angry you were that week, and you now live in this place where Josh Allen needs more weapons, and now this is what's in vogue to be angry about. When it comes to the aversion to offensive talent, just on the whole, how do you feel in your core about that and how it set the team up for 2025?
You mean in terms of just like the draft?
Yeah, just the draft and their aversion to investing assets in the offense, even though they had opportunities to do so.
I think it's twofold. One, how this offense is currently built for 2025 and even beyond to a degree, but how they're built for 2025. I want to be careful I say this because I'm waiting for somebody to be like, wait. Like they're already set up very well for who they are and what they are. Now, you just start from like inside out. They have a very good starting five, a cohesive offensive line that's good in pass pro, multiple in terms of their run schemes. They can run zone, they can run gap. They're at the forefront of a lot of different movements offensively with their offensive line. Alec Anderson has become a quality 6. You've got some other guys waiting in the wings that are also good depth guys. Like they built a good line. You're deep at running back. Like you have 3 capable, functional running backs from James Cook all the way to Ty Johnson. You got 2 starting caliber tight ends, even though Knox isn't the sexiest, and I'm not the hugest fan of him, but he's still a starting caliber tight end, maybe towards the lower end of the tiers, but still a starting caliber tight end. You've invested in Dalton Kincaid, and then you've got this wide receiver room that you also invested in a bunch last year, and even in the offseason, or maybe not, maybe a bunch is relative, but the Keon Coleman signing, the Curtis Samuel signing, the Josh Palmer signing this year.
Investing in I have to stop you because when you say invest and then you try to talk about the wide receiver depth chart, investing in Laviska Shenault is like buying Enron.
Okay, but he's not going to matter, guy. And now you've ruined my Laviska Shenault joke that I was going to make like a minute from now. I'm like, plus it doesn't matter because I got Laviska Shenault. But he's a depth guy. He's a camp body. He's not going to matter. Now, if you told me for receiver, where so much of this conversation comes down to, right? Because people are talking about like the lack of support for the offense. They're not talking about, oh, they need a more offensive lineman in case like, because Connor McGovern and David Edwards are both UFAs next year. If anything, I think the bigger case could have been made that you need interior offensive line. Because what happens if you don't bring back McGovern and Edwards next year? Is Van Pran Granger ready to step in and start? Is Alec Anderson ready to step in and start? If both of those guys start, who's now your 6th offensive lineman to wield in that set? Like,
I'll tell you who pissed me off was the Detroit Lions. Just kept taking, because I'm looking at this stack up.
Did you see what Tyreek Williams said?
Yes.
I broke my heart.
So here's defensive tackle, one of your favorites,
Yes.
Tyreek Williams, who flat out says, if I had made it to 30, the Bills told me I was the
Yes,
pick.
so mad.
So he doesn't fall because the Lions take him in the first round.
Great pick.
And I'm already watching your Twitter feed like a hawk. I'm like, please tell me he's going to have some. And you didn't flame out. You know, there was no crash out, but it was.
I respected what the Lions did. I was not pleased. I was not pleased.
And so then I spent the morning after, the morning of day 2, talking to Brett Coleman and EJ Snyder from Bootleg Football. And I was like, look, all right, so Hairston, just to get a feel for what do you guys think as outsiders in those skin in the game? And they both liked the pick. They were like, this is a great fit. Good pick. And then they were like, okay, well, where do they go now? Do they go wide receiver? Do they do this? And I was like, honestly, they probably can and will go D tackle, but I also wouldn't hate it if they were to find a way to take Tate Ratledge, because we need another Torrance on the inside that we don't have to pay, especially if they decide they're going to keep Torrance, because we can't have 5 linemen all on extensions with large contracts. And then the Lions took fucking.
Yeah, you were so mad. You DM'd me about that. Yeah, that was funny. Yeah, they like interior offensive line's a good point. Like you've paid Spencer Brown, you paid Dawkins. Edwards is UFA next year. McGovern's a UFA next year.
And it just didn't fall to us.
No, it didn't fall. And are you keeping Osiris Torrance for the long haul? Like, so I could have even made that case that that's bigger than wide receiver. And then also, this wide receiver draft wasn't tremendously strong. And I say that as a person who wanted Torrey Horton in round 4 and who liked Jalen Royals in round 4 and who hoped Kyle Williams would fall to a grabbable spot in round 3. He ended up going in round 2 to the Pats, Pats had a tremendous draft this year. But I look at the wide receiver room, which is what all this smoke is about, which is also funny too, because like everybody and their mother was all like, first 3 picks got to be corner, interior, defensive line, and edge. That's all it's got to be. And then they did it, but everybody's still mad. But I look at the receiver room. If you were to tell me this Bills team was going to become like, hey, we're going to live in 11 and 10 personnel, and we're going to spread it out and chuck it 40 to 50 times, I don't think I love this wide receiver room. Even without that, it's not a tremendous group on paper. But for what they want to be, which even though Josh Allen's the face of the team, one of the best players in the league, current reigning, defending NFL MVP,
the offensive line is going to stir the drink.
The offensive line stirs the drink, and this is a run-first football team. The run game is what sets the foundation, and everything goes from there. So when you look at this wide receiver room, they're built to run the ball, to have bigger bodies, to play condensed formations, to mix the light and the dark with the play action and all these things. That's what they are built towards. And they've already got that with what they're built with. Again, that doesn't mean I wouldn't have liked some receiver pieces instead of some of the guys they took, which we'll get into, but to act like they did the offense a disservice or like, yes, oh man, can't believe you like sold them up the creek by not it's just I just thought that was a little dramatic given the current construction and what the defense needed and how many holes and upgrades the defense needed.
So we're looking at a tweet right now from Brett Coleman that he tweeted out on April 27th at 10:57 p.m. Oh, God, so the average NFL third down conversion percentage is in 3rd and 5 is 46%, which means by and large the defense wins those reps.
Yeah, but it's close.
It's close, 50-50. But they win. In 3rd and 7, that drops all the way down to 36%. So if you can win 1st and 2nd down, then the odds are pretty good about your team getting off the field.
Which is, not to plug, shameless plug, but what Terrell Bernard said to myself and Eric in the film room, what Greg Rousseau said to myself, to me and Eric in the film room, which is a huge part of what people lose in the plugger or run-stopping defensive tackle conversation in midst of other things getting lost. But yeah, that's a huge, huge piece.
And so when you watch them invest in 3 of their 4 picks are directly in the trenches on the defensive side of the ball. This is a group that everyone was bitching and complaining about. I love that phrase now. I'm gonna be saying it for a week. But the people
came on the radio and said bitching. That was just so funny to me.
It's awesome. So the idea that they invested heavily in those areas with not just because here's my thing. You said everyone had their kind of, hey, I need this type of player, this type of player, this type of player. And then at the time of the draft, as I'm watching it, I'm like, I love the ideas. I just don't know about the personnel themselves.
Yes, fair.
But then when you look at it and you're like, well, Landon, he's not much. When you look at this now, Chris has it up in front of us. Chris, you want to scroll down and show me the defensive side of the ball. So if you wanted to tell me that I've now got AJ Epinesa, who we know isn't much of a pass rusher, but he's become a better run defender.
Yes.
You're going to have Michael Hoyt. You're going to have Landon Jackson. You're going to have Deion Walker. You're going to have, TJ Sanders. You're going to have Dwayne Carter. I already feel better about this group, not even knowing who's in the final roster, than I do knowing what we had on paper from a run-stopping perspective.
And that's not even accounting for the suspensions that are going to happen for the first games of the year.
And so this is a group that is all of a sudden deep and has a lot of talent and can probably do more to get you to those 3rd and 7s. And so in that way, they did a thing where I go, okay, I don't see, like one of the things that I kept trying to tell my friends who were just texting me angry about this. And I'm like, look, everybody wanted the Max Crosby thing. Everybody wanted the Myles Garrett thing and the Trey
I would have
Hendrickson
welcomed those.
thing.
That would have been cool.
Because, again, you look at it and you go, I need a Josh Allen on the other side of the ball.
Yes. Like the Chiefs, because everybody, you got Patrick Mahomes, and then, you got Chris Jones. You got McDuffie. I recognize
And
that.
the Eagles dominated a Super Bowl without that guy. I mean, Jalen Carter's very good.
Yeah, but when you have a rotation of 6 to 7 bodies on the D line, and everybody's like a B to a B plus or a B to an A minus or even an A with what Carter can be at the top, you've just got never ending waves of.
Well, and they've got athleticism.
Yes.
And that's where I think this becomes important. They have athleticism. And so what you end up with is the ability to run like they did, like the Eagles did to the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. Stunts to the outside where they go, hey, we don't give a shit how good your interior offensive line is. Play with yourself. Well, we're going to go out here and manhandle these tackles who have no idea what's coming for them.
Play with yourself.
Play with yourself. There was reps where Creed Humphrey's just out there looking for something to do.
Yeah. Oh, you guys are good in the interior? That's fine. We're just going to attack the flanks.
We'll just go behind that guy.
Thank you so much.
And there's nothing he can do to stop. There's nothing he can do to stop. He can't help Patrick Mahomes. He's helpless. It's that dynamic where I go, look, you can be mad at the players if you wanted to narrow it down to, I don't like player X for a reason. Okay, cool. We can all have opinions about that. But to say this is a bad draft because of how they chose to attack it,
Yeah.
I think that that's really flawed thinking.
Agreed.
I myself love it. I love the ideas that they shot for because it gets us closer to that while backfilling some things in the secondary that I think you're going to have to keep throwing bodies at this problem because there is no Taron Johnson. There's no Taron Johnson coming next draft. When everyone's like, oh, don't worry, just draft another slot and you replace a guy who's been
An all-pro.
Yeah, an all-pro.
Who's arguably the most important player to the entire defense. Yeah, just draft a replacement.
Just go get another one.
Yeah.
No. You're going to have to throw waves of players at this problem. And then you're probably still going to have to shift your ideology a little bit to accommodate for when he starts to decline and when he inevitably leaves. So just seeing their approach, I think it was refreshing in the sense that they get it. Now, Chris, do you have those RASC scores that I sent you?
Everybody loves RAS.
Yeah, I do. I can pull up the
Yeah, if you can go ahead and pull that up.
spreadsheet. I'll need a image of it.
Everybody loves a good
Yeah.
RAS.
So here's what I want you to see this. In the lower right-hand side over here is our 2020 draft, because this is what I love. When we talk about the athleticism and kind of what they went after here. Chris, if you scroll over, move, there we go.
Oh, boy, it's a lot of red.
A lot of red there for that 2020 draft class. AJ Epinesa, 4.03. Zach Moss, a 2.8. Jake Fromm is hilarious.
I forgot they took Jake
I like
Fromm.
that Nate Geary had to drink multiple Seagrams because he was like, that guy will throw a touchdown. What do you say? Multiple touchdowns?
In the regular season?
No, he said Jake Fromm will never throw an NFL
that's it.
touchdown pass. He has one.
For the Giants?
Yeah,
For the
that's
Giants
funny.
in garbage time, and he threw that touchdown. And I remember.
See, that's so hard to make such a blanket statement like that. Those little...
I mean, you know Nate.
Oh, yeah, that's
We
true.
love Nate.
That's true.
He's one of us.
That's such a Nate statement. That's so
such
good.
a Nate Geary
Yeah,
statement.
that's
Jake Fromm
good.
will never throw it. And when it happened, I texted him. He goes, I'm broken. He's like, he goes, I can't believe they let that happen to
broken.
me. His response was, I can't believe they let that happen to me.
How could they do this to me? How dare they?
Dane Jackson, who is currently on the Bills roster with a 4.4 RAS score. Now, obviously, RAS gets, I think, overused.
Yes.
But if I'm talking just as a simple way to say, one group of people had really subpar athleticism.
For those who can't see, there's a lot of red, which is bad. And then the recent drafts, there's a lot of green, which is good.
I'm sure Chris and Post can add something in here. But then as you go year over year, 2023, and then into 2024, and I think this is the highest concentration of picks at the top of a draft that we've seen from this team in terms of investing in athletic prospects. Now, some of that, I'm sure, is just these are the guys on our board. There's a reason they're there. But I also like the fact that when you look at it, all three of the defensive backs that they took, that was, I'm not going to say Christian Benford was a bad athlete, but there's a reason he wasn't taken higher.
Yeah, he's not a plus athlete.
No.
He makes his money via technique and processing and some size and physicality. And he's not a poor athlete, but he's not Derek Stingley.
No.
He's not this plus. Oh man, he runs what's his 40? Oh man, his explosion metrics are what? Yeah.
And then you think about Dane Jackson, Levi Wallace. Let's walk through the names that have been here.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, Then you look at what they did this year, and they took nothing but plus athletes at defensive back. You know, they bring in an outside corner, a guy who they think can play slot corner, and then a guy who was a slot corner who they see more as a safety, and they've said as much. All of them plus athletes. I think that's an infusion of talent that I'm actually like, it has me excited about training camp because I want to see what that looks like stacked up against older, veteran, but less athletic talent.
Fair.
My thing for training camp is I'm like super interested in the cornerback room because you signed Dane Jackson and Trey White. You drafted 3 corners, and you already have Benford and Teron, but Teron's nickel only.
And you got your Marcus Ingram.
Yeah, it's going to be wild to see how the cornerback room plays out.
The corner room and the defensive tackle room. Like, who's odd man out? Like, are they just like, hey, Dwayne Carter, there's a good chance like you're done? Or is it really just more of an experimental thing with Walker? Like, yeah, defensive tackle and corner, there's going to be some good, even safety too. Like, if you told, this is probably not great for some folks, but if you told me that Derek Forrest ends up winning a starting safety spot, I would not be floored in any way, shape, or form. And I think that speaks to him, but also just what that safety group is. Like, there's, and again, there's questions still on the defensive side of the ball. So it makes sense that they address the defensive side. They're not to get into this too much, but like, even what Bean said a little bit on the radio, which I caught briefly because we were talking offline before, I was in kind of a hibernation the past several days, but this offense was top of the league in all these advanced metrics and raw stats. Even the year before, when everybody said Ken Dorsey was the worst thing, they were still in the top of the league with a bunch of advanced metrics and good things. Now, there were some disjointed pieces that needed to get fixed, which did, and led them to further success. But this has been a good offense that just needs a couple bodies and some tweaking here and there. This was a defense that needed a lot. They had even again, they brought in Dane and Trey White. Who was your starting CB2? Like, going into this week before you took Hairston, like, what was the defensive tackle rotation looking like? Because Austin Johnson and Dwayne Carter gave you nothing last year. And I feel bad continuing to say it, but I keep seeing so many people that were like, yeah, but Dwayne Carter was really good before the injury. No, he wasn't. He did well in that game against Houston. He had some flashes. He had a couple flashes. Oh, maybe that one against New England on like a 3rd down, or Tennessee on a 3rd or 4th down, something like random later. But you needed a defensive tackle 3. You needed a defensive tackle 4. You kind of needed a defensive tackle 5, depending on what you looked at with Carter. And then Ogunjobi suspended for 6 games, so technically you still needed a defensive tackle 3. And then also Larry Ogunjobi is a UFA next year, so you still need a defensive tackle 3 for next year. And then there's similar questions on the edge. I just don't know how we got here, to your point, like, of how you like phrased it. And I don't think it's like set up or cherry picking at all. Like, so many people, oh, McDermott's a joke. This defense lets us down again. This defense sucks. I can't believe they let down Josh Allen. All right, cool. So let's draft a bunch of defense. I can't believe they drafted defense and let down Josh Allen. What the fuck are we doing?
Why are you ignoring Josh Allen? And it's like, wait a minute, you idiots. So with that said, I don't try to entertain that. Instead, I try to steer into what I like about this. And I go, hey, let's all try to see the positivity here.
Yeah, look at all the green.
One of the things I love is, and I'm intrigued by, is Jordan Hancock.
Oh, a good call.
And you know, if we want to talk about this a little bit, Jordan Hancock, you know, I'll get to Maxwell Harrison in a minute because I know he's our 1st round pick, and that's really in these types of shows where you're supposed to spend your time.
Let's talk about it.
But it's my show. I get to do whatever the fuck I want.
That's true.
Jordan Hancock is super interesting to me because, you know, I'm sitting here and I'm looking at his draft reports, and you look at RAS score and you go, okay, he's actually the best athlete he tested the best out of all the athletes we drafted, which is saying something. Considering
yeah, it's kind of like what AEW's done with Kevin Knight coming over. They have a roster that's athletic and well done, and then you get someone like Kevin Knight, and you're just like, wow, this guy is just another high caliber level of athlete, and he's just gotten in.
You got me.
Thank you.
I have no idea who that is.
You gotta watch Kevin Knight.
No, we don't. No, you don't. You know what I need to watch?
Drew knows all
the
about
back of my eyelids.
No, come on. You've been texting me the last couple weeks, like, Anthony, have you been seeing all these Kevin Knight matches on ever since, you know, he faced off against Jay White on his debut, and then he saw him in the Owen against Will Ospreay. He's been tearing it up. And I was like, whoa, Drew.
Was Kevin Knight a part of Survivor Series 93?
Oh, I wish.
One of the Knights?
Nice. I see what you're doing.
What I love is that Jordan Hancock is this guy who kind of got forgotten about in all the pre-draft stuff because he's not, you know, Greg Cosell came on One Bills Live and had kind of a really nice synopsis of it. And then you start watching more videos and going and finding actual draft like prep resources where they're talking about his skill sets. But he said he had the perfect, I think, synopsis of what he was in college, which I think is what you need if you're a team that's trying to reset the floor of what you want to be in defense, where you go, I have questions at safety. Taylor Rapp, is he the answer long term? I don't know. He can't stop kamikazing himself and everything around him.
That's such an over.
I know, but my point is, Jordan Hancock's the type of player where at the end of games, you go, I don't know that he had a splash play, but you know what he did is somehow quietly just had 9 tackles and 2 pass breakups, and he was just in the backfield, and he came on blitzes, and you're like, oh, wait. Yeah, that guy was all over the place. But you don't think about it in the moment, and when you watch the highlight reels, you're not going to see it. But football teams are made around guys like that, where you're like, all I need is for you to go do your job. Just do your job, be where you're supposed to be. I feel like that's 2/3 of being a safety in the NFL, isn't it?
Fair. Yeah, the responsibility, the athleticism. It's funny when they took him. So I watched so much Ohio State tape this draft cycle because of
Tyleik
Williams, and then JT Tuimoloau, Jack Sawyer. I like Cody Simon, their linebacker, so I watched that. And then they have Caleb Downs, who is my number 1 on my big board going into 2026. Safety, who all world, everything was. Bama as a freshman.
You already have a big board.
I have a problem. So Caleb Downs is sick. So I watched so much Ohio State tape, and I wanted to tweet this out on Saturday, but I couldn't because I had some things going on. I made notes watching all these guys. I kept seeing number 7. Number 7 would flash. He'd do something cool in the backfield or something cool in the secondary. I'm like, oh, 7's cool. And I kept telling myself, go look at, is 7 draft eligible? Who is 7? Because I knew the name, but I didn't know too much from that. And I never got back to it. And I do this all the time. And I do this every offseason, yell at myself for not going back. And he just had a bunch of splash plays, the athleticism, the trigger, the plays in short area and space. I don't know how viable he is the further away he gets from the line of scrimmage in the NFL, but he can do, he can live in a split field world like they did it a lot at Ohio State. It was him and Lathan Ransom as the deep safeties, and then they're using Downs as the Tampa player because they ran a bunch of cover 2 and Tampa 2 and non-traditional stuff that was pretty cool, and some invert and robber and things that they were doing within the Tampa world. But yeah, you watch him in the slot. You watch him in and around the box. He can play a little deep. He's got good athleticism. He's got a trigger. He's got some burst. He's pretty smart. It was cool to see them pick him because it was one of those guys who I kind of made notes on and stashed away. Man, 7 just keeps making plays. And it would be in the most random games. He'd have a big hit or really nice coverage rep. I'm like, oh, that's cool. And just kind of store it away. And I told myself to go back and I never did. And lo and behold, they ended up taking him. But that's a good, for a team that's relied on Cam Lewis as, okay, the backup for Taron Johnson. Okay, kind of an emergency safety, but also maybe a safety 3, depending on what's going on. It's interesting that they got a guy like Hancock who has more athleticism, has more juice to his game, has more size, approaching almost 200 pounds. And in the low, I think, 6'1" or in that range, decent arm length. I thought it was a cool pick just to see kind of somebody who you kept tabs on and be oh, what is this guy's pretty fun. And then they took that guy and it's oh, damn it. I really should have gone back and done the work that I told myself to do on this guy on a defense that had a ton of good dudes. So if you're I don't care if it's only once a game. If you're standing out in any way on a defense that has the guys that defense had, you're doing something right.
Now, Chris, when it comes to our first round pick, Maxwell Hairston, obviously, elite athlete, great. He's the bee's knees, right? Super fluid zone guy.
Do bees have knees?
I'm going to read you something from his. I'm going to read you something from his draft profile, and I want to know whether or not this concerns you.
Better be positive.
Okay.
Don't want to get yelled at.
Should compete as special teams performer. Lacks run support physicality to be an every down corner, but he's talented enough to challenge for slot duties right away.
This is for Max Hairston?
No, hang on. Has feet, athleticism, and instincts for prolonged coverage responsibilities, and his twitch will always have him near the throw. That sounds like a wide receiver who belongs being drafted in the first round, right?
Corner.
Yeah.
Corner, yeah.
I was so confused.
Corner.
I'm going to say, are you talking about Kyer Elam?
No, I'm actually describing what they said about Trey White.
Oh,
see,
fun.
Trey White, 27th pick in the NFL draft. He fell down in 2017, and the Bills drafted him at that point in the draft. And at the time, they said, hey, look, he's not the greatest athlete in the world, and he lacks the physicality that run support's going to require. And, hey, we don't see him as an every down corner out of the gate. Do you remember how many games he started as a rookie?
Was it all of them?
Yeah. A lot? It was definitely a lot. All of them?
He came back. The only one he missed time in was the game where he got elbowed by Gronk.
That was his rookie year?
I believe that was his rookie year,
Oh,
if
wow,
I'm
I
being
thought it was
correct.
after that.
Because
No, he
Tyrod
left the game to go sign with AEW.
Yeah, because Tyrod Taylor was our quarterback for that game. I know that because I had to find out that he got the hammer dropped on him from a friend via text because I recused myself from that game.
I was waiting for this. That was because I was in a jail cell.
Well, I left because I was going to end up in one because the guy next to me was not only a Patriots fan, but just an out and out, unabashed racist. And he was real comfortable saying some real wild things to me. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to extricate myself from this before just all hell breaks
I don't
loose.
want to catch a body
Because
today.
I've been drinking all day, and I'm going to make poor choices. So with that said, Tre'Davious White. So when I read that and I go, well, you can have your feelings about what a player can and can't be when it comes to the pre-draft evaluation. And that's from Lance Zierlein from NFL Network, who I think does an okay job. Not best, not worst, but he's in there, right? He's in there. I just like the idea that the people who do this professionally can tell you that a player like, oh, this is what I think about him. And then the guy goes into the right team with the right system and just becomes an all-pro every down starting cornerback or player in general at any position. Draft evaluation is just that. It's pre-draft evaluation. Everything that happens after that, you're putting that player into the hands of a team and saying, hey, you've taken this guy with all of his warts, all of his problems, and you've done so because you think you can sand down the rough edges and make something out of him. Now, as we talked about last week, Bean goes out of his way to admit some of the players that they're drafting, they don't see as starters. They just see as like, hey, he's a heck of a backup. Yeah. Hey, this guy's going to be a core special teamer for us, which is something we already, like, we used to pay Dirty Red a bunch of money to be that. Why are we doing that? Go draft a guy then who can be that for you.
Yeah, be cost effective at it for 4 years.
And so that's where you get your Joe Andreessens, and that's where some of these guys come from. With that in mind, I see Hairston and I hear you about which again, it wasn't even your agenda. You just put out into the ether, hey, this is a guy who tackles.
Willing tackler, but inconsistent and needs work. That's literally, I said he's willing, but he needs work on his angles and his decision making and his leverage.
And guess whose job it is to teach him that? The Buffalo Bills and Sean McDermott, who have done a good job grooming cornerbacks to become starters in the NFL. Now, the question I have for you when it comes to those guys, because it's one of my favorite concepts, was just, you had this thing of they were here, right? Like the value was there, and they didn't take Amos. They didn't take all of the Ravel, all of the names that we've heard for weeks as being like, if this guy's there, this is a slam dunk of a pick for the Bills. And I want to take it back a little bit farther. The Bills, the last time they decided to take a cornerback in the first round, kind of got burned.
Yeah.
Because it was known that they needed a cornerback.
Yes.
And, just looking at my notes here, because I kind of wrote it down, like talking about, Dane Jackson's on the roster. That tells you how dire things got. They were like, we need a familiar face. We don't care if he's any good. We just need a body pre-draft in case things don't go well.
Give us the floor that we know. Go from there.
When they drafted him in 2022, Kyrie Elam, right? Stingley goes. And then Sauce Gardner goes. And then Kyle Hamilton goes. Because those guys had physical skill sets and tape. And everyone said, these guys are obviously inside track to being an elite football player. And so we were already kind of behind the eight ball in terms of getting talent out of that group. And there was clearly a drop off. And the Kansas City Chiefs knew it. And they knew that we had tipped our hand as to what we wanted. So they trade up 2 picks in front of us to get Trent McDuffie.
I wanted him so bad. He was my corner 3. I loved him so much.
So they go up and get him. And I mean, everybody else ahead of him has developed into a star player in the NFL. We take the 5th defensive back at Kyrie Elam. And it goes just about as poorly as it can go for a first-round draft pick. And fast forward to this year, we didn't get skunked. There was one corner taken in Jahdae Barron who I don't even know if he really fit what the Bills were trying to
I
do.
wanted him. I didn't care.
It would have been nice.
Yeah.
But you had your pick, Malachi Starks too. He goes.
Oh yeah, I was like, oh, if he falls, does that intrigue them at all? Yeah, he went to Baltimore. Of course he did.
And so then you're stuck, but you're looking at it going, all the guys we've spent months talking about are going to be there.
And also keep in mind, if Hairston and Tyleek are both there,
Sure.
it sounds like it was going to be Tyleek. Granted, they didn't say like, oh, this is our other guy and we're going to take him instead of you. But it sounds like if Tyleek Williams is there, they were taking Tyleek Williams.
So you got to that point, the Bills have their pick of the litter, and they decided to take a guy who differed very much philosophically from what I think most pundits, most Bills fans thought, because everyone thought Amos would have been the guy.
Yeah.
And then you watch Amos fall to the third round.
No, he went end of
the second?
End of 2, I think he had at Washington.
Okay. So this happens, and I guess the question is like, they're obviously, because they very intentionally took Hairston over the rest of the crowd. Do you find that surprising that they would pick that specific skill set, or do you think it really speaks to the fact that they know maybe they're choosing to do more of the plus athlete thing at cornerback now, rather than try to live in a world where we're just going to get by with Christian Benfords and hope they turn into something?
Fair. I think it's twofold. One, I think Hairston has such a better feel for coverage, especially in zone, than Kyer Elam did. So you've got the plus athlete, not necessarily the size and the frame. Like Elam had the speed and the length and the frame and the thickness, like everything. Hairston has the speed and the explosion in spades. A little bit of a smaller frame, slender frame, which adds to some of his tackling woes at times. But he has such a better feel for zone coverage. His ability to collect, match, carry, deliver, recognize route distributions, read them, play off the quarterback, spatial awareness, the ability to space routes, it's far better than Kyer. And I say that as a person who I thought Kyer could develop, but I did not like that pick. I don't remember where he was in my rankings, but I had like a late second round grade on him. I just didn't buy into that hype for him coming out. But I do think it's interesting, and the question you pose, I think, is a valid one. Like, is it because he's got the traits that are nice, like the explosion, the RAS score, all that kind of stuff, but he also does fit from a zone perspective, like what they like. And then he also has the traits that you could coach him up and play more man coverage with him or play some press man. And he shows some of it in spurts, needs more, polish there, and more reps in that regard in general. But he's got good, calm, clean feet. He is a willing tackler despite the woes there. But yeah, it is usually they go for more of the responsible player at corner and the known quantity at corner. Good tackler, all of these things. And that's not even to get into, and we don't know this, I don't want to get too much of it, but like the off the field stuff. That was part of why. So my rankings, I had Amos. I had the same top 3, I think, as a lot of folks for corner with Hunter, Johnson, and then Barron. Granted, I didn't know about Johnson, the significance of his injuries, but then Amos at 4. And then 5 and 6 were like conflicted for me between Ravel and Hairston. But part of me putting Hairston at 6 was the tackling stuff, but also like the off the field things. I didn't know how much fire was to that smoke. And that's kind of off-brand for them, in addition to not being a sound tackler is a little off-brand for them, and also, like, taking the athletic guy is also a little off-brand for them.
So in a draft where I know you've been joking on your podcast and all the shows you've been doing about the archetype.
Yes.
This is very much an off-the-reservation pick for them.
He fits the archetype from a zone coverage standpoint, like what they want and how he reads and plays there.
But there's a lot of stuff here where you go, this is atypical.
There's some gray. I think there's more gray than there is known quantity. Granted, the known quantity is a big box for them, but there are significant questions aside from that, which makes it very interesting.
And that just, the causation.
Yes.
Correlation does not equal causation. But it's interesting seeing that all of these teams, like the Ravens, they have Zay Flowers, and they have these guys who can fly, and that they're a crucial part of their offense. You see the Chiefs who go out and draft a Xavier Worthy with speed, and it's like, I don't want to say it because I'm probably wrong, as I am in most things in life. But I just caught myself thinking when I saw it, and I'm going to bed that night, and I'm thinking, it might be something of a reaction to what they saw in that final game where they're like, hey, at some point I'm going to have to change things a little bit here because there's a lot of elite athletes on these other teams stacking up against me.
Even to the previous year, I've said it a bunch. I've said it on this show too. Like, I don't think Cole Bishop was a seamless fit for the Bills at safety. But what did he have? A lot of athleticism, a really good RAS score. Again, you know, if you go back to what it was last year, you have queued up there at 9.88, which is even higher than what Jordan Hancock's was. It's higher than Maxwell Hairston. I think it's the highest RAS score of anyone they've had. But I didn't think he was like I didn't think he was like a seamless fit, but he was another guy. Now, Hairston's more of a fit than I thought Bishop was, but Bishop was another drop in we need to get more athletic on the back end. We need to have more juice. We need to combat some things. Now, I think Bishop is more of similar to the Elam pick, where it was like, hey, we've got this guy with the traits. We can coach him up and get him there. And they have a better track record at safety than they do at corner, so I can understand it. But you even add it to that, and now you've got Benford, who isn't unathletic, but he's not an athletic marvel, but he's got a combination of size and athleticism. And then you've got Hairston, who's a plus athlete. Ideally, they want Bishop to win the job, who's a plus athlete back there. So now 2 out of your 4 starters on the traditional secondary should be plus athletes.
Yep.
Then you got Taron Johnson, who is good in the light and the dark from the run and the pass, isn't an amazing athlete, but it's interesting how they've started to dip into more of the athletic buckets on the back end when previously they've been Tre'Davious White and Levi Wallace and even Hyde and Poyer, great in their roles, weren't these athletic marvels, especially towards the back end. They won with positioning and their head and their ability to read and understand. Like, for as great as Hyde was as making all these plays, and 99% of the world is covered in water, the other 1% is covered by Micah Hyde and all those jokes, haha. And he wasn't a poor athlete, but he wasn't like some burner back there, but his angles to the ball were great. His ability to diagnose were great. They had more technicality on the
Him
back
coming
end.
across from the opposite hash to pick off that pass in that playoff game that Mac Jones threw.
Yeah.
I mean, that speaks to who he was, because he's not a freak athlete like that.
No.
He just understood, reacted in time. His timing and his placement was
angle
perfect.
was perfect. If you watch
Everything was
it,
perfect.
there is no false step. He literally sees it and beelines it. There's no like, oh, let me go left a little, let me go right a little. It is a straight line. And like you said, the timing's perfect.
Whoop.
Yep, and it's beautiful. And he had some juice to his game because he punt returner and some athleticism, with what he did at Green Bay. But he wasn't this huge plus athlete. Poyer was versatile, but not a huge plus athlete. But when things really started to, and they were a little bit in their younger years, but as the team really started to click in like 2020 and 21 and 22, they were less athletic than they were early on. And this secondary won with technicality. And now they've added more athleticism and juice, which is interesting.
So now let's talk about the front seven in a little bit, because I want to get into pick specific stuff as we kind of round this out. Best value pick of the draft.
Oh.
For me, and I know you already said you didn't like it, so you went looking for it. The Deion Walker idea is nice to me.
Yeah, the idea is fine.
The idea is fine. And I guess that's where, again, you talk to fans and everything's it's either 100% full go, this guy is going to be the next coming of like a Warren Sapp type individual, or Casey Hampton, like, oh my God, we found our Casey Hampton, or he's going to suck and he's going to be terrible and he's going to be, who's the guy that Bean drafted or got drafted while Bean was there in Carolina with McDermott? They took him in the first round and then they immediately brought him here to free agency as soon as Carolina didn't retain him. What was his name? He was a first round pick, I want to say out of Louisiana Lafayette, at defensive tackle. Oh, this is going to bother me.
This is driving me nuts.
Guys, call in if you know.
I was saying there's too many. Nice. There's not to give us a pass. There's too many Carolina guys that have come through. Like, I was immediately running through everybody. Oh, good call. Nice. There you go.
Vernon Butler. So the idea being, he very much could just be a Vernon Butler, who is just a big dude who plays not well.
Yeah.
A big dude who doesn't make any impact for given how big that he is.
Yeah.
It's entirely possible. But the fact that they rolled the dice on that type of player excites me, because they go, look, we understand that he's, again, high cut player, has problems with pad level because of his height.
In addition to some others.
His technique's not great. Greg Cassell, this is where even the best, I hear Greg Cassell talking about, he's got all these moves. He's got a club move and a rip and a stab and this move and that move. And I go, I don't know. I'm a layperson, but I'm watching this. Another guy had done an independent Senior Bowl breakdown on him. This is, again, pre-draft. and he showed every play that this guy was involved in, broke it down, did replays and everything. And I go, I see some nice things like reach blocks. He's defeating them to the inside. And it's like, oh, the play's going away from him, and he's still athletic enough to beat the lineman to his spot.
Yeah, you can shoot some gaps.
That's nice. Also, why is he on the ground in this one? Also, why are you Deion Walker? You're Shaq. What you are like Shaquille O'Neal out here on the court next to everybody else. Why are you laying on the ground?
Fair.
In fact, it took me back to a clip. An angry, upset Dolphins fan posted about Liam Eichenberg. They're like, this man is robbing us blind. He broke down like 5 awful reps in one game from Liam Eichenberg. He goes, why are you on the ground 10 feet away from the play? That's how I felt about Deion Walker watching this thing. I go, that's a bad look sometimes.
Yeah, it's not great.
What's your take on him and his upside? Because to me, he's the best value in terms of you didn't spend a premium pick to get him. Mm-hmm. But you traded up to get him because you were very intentional about this specific skill set and player.
Yeah.
Just the upside and what you think about him.
The upside for me is it's there, but it's so muddy because you have to. I mean, for one, he's got a vertebrae defect.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, when you're that tall and you have a back issue.
Yeah, which is not good.
And in some cases, maybe it's one of those things. I did postulate this to a coworker. Spencer Brown had a back issue, and it stole an entire season from him. Where we as fans were screaming for replacement player, he needs competition and was steadfast. No, we trust him.
Yeah.
Now he's not saying it out loud, but yeah, the guy had a pretty bad back issue and we think we have it fixed and we can deal with this.
Yeah.
So knowing that they already have that experience as a GM and a scouting department, maybe they feel a little bit more comfortable taking on a guy who has some of these back issues at that size, knowing we've dealt with this before and it's been fine.
Or maybe even too, like they're like, you know what, if he doesn't work out, we're still confident with, Dwayne Carter's defensive tackle 5. We're no worse for wear there, but if he hits, man, he could really be this thing.
Exactly. It's a swing for the fences when you didn't have to, but you chose to.
And if it works out, cool. I just think the if it works out is a big if because it's twofold, or not twofold. It's like 3 and 4-fold. You have
Stop
to
talking about his stomach.
I'm not going to talk about it. Oh, that's funny. I wasn't going to talk about stomach. That's very good. Well done. Not only do you have to, and Bean mentioned it already, like, we might not have him, like, I forget verbiage, but essentially kind of like, maybe you won't see him a ton this offseason in practices and camp because we want to make sure the back is right and all these things. So it's like, one, it's getting his back right, which is a big thing.
Which gives like a red shirt vibe.
Yes, and is a little scary. But also, too, they have a good medical team. Maybe they have history. Maybe it's similar to what Spencer Brown had. I don't think Brown didn't have a defect, but again, maybe they're confident in some regard. Cool.
Sure.
But then you also have to reproportion some of the weight because he is a very big guy, but
thin legs.
Yes, he's a top-heavy guy with a lean lower body, like lean legs. They're not spindles, but he is very top-heavy, and that plus playing high, either of those things are not good. Those two things in conjunction with one another are not good. Like, so you see him get displaced, he gets knocked back, he gets knocked sideways, but he is very light on his feet. I think part of it is because he's like has a thinner, like, lower body. Like, he's not rooted to the ground. He's not a plugger. He's not this anchor power guy. He'll chuck some dudes every once in a while, but when they drafted him, all I tweeted was like, ha, 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 like a whole bunch. Cause it was just so many people have clamored for like the big guy inside. And I think they took him and everybody went, there's the big plugger. And it's like, no. If anything, they're trolling you. Like he plays like he's 295. He's a gap shooter. He's a penetrator. Yep. He's an upfield guy. And also his alignment was interesting. Like, they'll line him up everywhere. Like, head up on the center. So anywhere from like a 0 to a 1 to a 3 to a 4 to a 4-eye to a 5 to a wide 9. They're doing all these things with him. And he's more athletic than his frame and size would indicate. But he's not a plugger. He's very much in the archetype of, hey, like, let's just penetrate and get upfield. And I don't like making comments, but some people have said it like, oh, so kind of like a Jordan Phillips who has this size, but is more like pass rush geared or isn't run defense or isn't like a plugger and an anchor guy. And kind of, yeah, like I think that's fair. I don't see all the moves that I guess others like talked about. I do think he's got some hand usage and some length, but he needs to clean that up. Like I think he needs work physically and from a technique standpoint. But to your point, if he hits, you've got this monster inside who already played athletic and moved well at 330 or 340 pounds. So if you can get him to be like 319 or like 321, and just I don't think you can't do something with like take some of the weight from up top and put it into his legs. I mean, there are ways to like do things like, but if you can just thin up the upper body, I think that's a big start, and then going with the back injury from there. But I'm very conflicted on it because I just didn't like the tape. And before anybody's like, you got to watch the 2023 tape, I did watch the 2023 tape. Thank you.
If anybody here has watched it, it's this guy.
Thank you.
So your favorite value in terms of they took a guy and combination of where they got him and what his upshot is, you love it.
It's so tough because how you define value. I really like the Jordan Hancock pick because I think he can be like a quality backup and special teamer. You got him in the 5th round. I think he can do some spot start duty if anything happens to Taryn. And you've got the opportunity that maybe he can become something long term. But I think he's more of like a high tier backup in terms of his ceiling. But if you get that in the 5th round, like I'm cool with that. I think that's a good value. I'd probably lean. Even though they traded up for him, I like the TJ Sanders pick.
Okay.
He just fits so well with what they want. I didn't think they'd take him because he's more 3-tech, and Bean even said it and then tried to walk it back the next day. He is more 3-tech than 1-tech, and I wanted them to take a 1-tech, and they were going to if Tyreek Williams was there, fucking Lions. But I think maybe Sanders or Hancock granted, they traded up for Sanders, so maybe that changes how you view value. But I'll go with Hancock just because I think if you can get a guy in the middle or towards the back end of day 3 who's going to be on your roster for 4 years and give you quality depth, I think that's a good win.
So now you're flush with 3-tech defensive tackles. You added, Landon Jackson, who we didn't really talk a ton about tonight, but he's another guy, right? He's AJ Epinesa 2.0. And I think that they spent the right value. Like where they drafted him is probably given what they wanted to do with him, where they should have taken AJ Epinesa.
A lot of folks thought Jackson would go in like the 40s or the 50s. And so the fact that he fell to them in 3 is interesting.
That's found money then. And that's okay because now if he doesn't pan out, you didn't take him earlier.
Yes.
You took your swing for a better pass rushing defensive lineman by trading up for TJ
There's
Sanders.
a case that he's the best value. Some of his skill set and frame worries me, but he could easily be the best value because I think he could just be a good edge 3 for you for a lot of years, and you took him in the 3rd round, so that's a win.
Why not?
Yeah.
If he's AJ Epinesa for you, it's okay. Yeah. I saw everyone, AJ Epinesa 2.0. Oh, I hate this pick. If he's that, you're paying that guy $8 million a year. Get out of that if you can.
Yeah. AJ Epinesa's been a fine player, not a fine player for a 2nd round pick.
No.
But he's been a useful player. You would just prefer if he came in the 3rd round or the 4th round instead of the 2nd round.
Yes. And so with that, I think Landon Jackson is fine.
Yes.
This is all fine. Last thing I'll touch on as we close out the show, they ignored the offense. In fact, you want to talk about trolling? I feel like that.
They took a receiver and a tight end and an offensive tackle.
I feel like them taking those in the last, like the 17th, 18th hole of a golf course. Like at this point, they're just trolling the fan base where they're like, screw it. Hey, you guys want to cry about this?
Offense.
Here's a wide receiver with the last pick. I'll see you in hell. How much confidence do you think that this draft, knowing that it was overflowing with running back talent, and the Bills very much stayed out of those waters. Some of it could have had to do with fit and the player. Because I never would have thought I like Judkins better than I asked Matt Waldman when he was on our show. I go, I think every Ohio State game I've watched, I've noticed Judkins more than TreVeyon Henderson. And so and Waldman was like, yeah, actually, that's pretty salient and good for you for noticing that he's got a little more juice. He runs with a little more physicality. He makes a few more splash plays. Yeah. The depth and like the meat of that class was picked pretty clean, pretty quickly. Yeah. I mean, the Browns taking Judkins in the 2nd round. It's early, shit. Okay.
And then TreVeyon went like 3 or 4 picks like right after that, and then the run happened.
So the run happened early, but they didn't end up taking a running back anywhere. Do you think it kind of gives truth to Brandon Beane's synopsis of where they stand with James Cook? Because I know like GMs say a lot of things and then they draft a guy and they go, that was just a smoke screen. We wanted this guy and we're going to be shrewd about this. And instead he's like, no, we're going to see Jim and he'll be here and we'll have conversations when we have them. And what do you think it means for his future here in 2025 that they stayed completely away from that position?
I didn't think his future in 2025 was in jeopardy unless he came out and did something like to use a word you used earlier, like unless he did something diabolical, like he would have had to come out and be like, I'm never playing for the Bills again unless I get a new contract, or like he would have to do something crazy aside from just like, I want more money, which like, again, Bean has been like, oh, I prefer guys keep it in house. But
I mean, if he had done that, he would have just gotten $40 million like Myles Garrett.
that's fair. Fair point. So I didn't think anything was in jeopardy for him in 2025. And given what they needed on defense and how and where the meat of this draft was in value at the positions they needed, I didn't think it made sense to take a running back. Because if you take a running back, all right, are you booting Ty Johnson? Are you booting Ray Davis? Are you booting James Cook? I think Cook means a lot to the offense, but I also don't think, like, I don't know, if they had to jettison him today, Ray Davis and Ty Johnson, like, isn't a horrible combination. You can kind of do some things with that, but I do think they would miss Cook. I just thought they were going to let Cook play out the last year of his deal and kind of say, like, hey, man, you're under contract. Like, we'll kind of cross that bridge when we get to it, knowing in the back of their mind that they'll probably take a running back next year and he'll probably chase the bag and go somewhere else. But it didn't. He would have really had to have. The only way I didn't see him, or I saw them taking a running back, was either if he did something drastic to force their hand, or they got some kind of offer, which they may have, and they could have rejected it, but some kind of offer during the draft where it was like, hey, we'll give you a second or a third round pick for James Cook. Because if you get rid of James Cook for a draft pick, you essentially have to use that draft pick to then take a running back at that spot.
Yep.
So the only way it was going to happen was if they got the value back for him, or he forced the hand. He didn't force the hand, and maybe they got that offer, and we don't know, but I don't think that happened, just based on teams knowing, like, we could probably get this guy as a free agent next year because the Bills aren't going to give him what he wants. I also don't think he's going to get what he wants on the open market, because he's not the second best running back in the NFL, even though he's been very good with the Bills. But yeah, it didn't surprise me that he's kind of still there. They didn't do anything.
The one guy that I was looking at was Trevor Etienne, because I go, oh, late round draft pick. This will be a good value, maybe to like maybe be the heir once this is all. He went 114th
Yeah, the
overall.
Panthers.
You're like, oh shit, that running back tree got picked clean quick.
Yeah, there was and people started loving it too, right? I mean, Scatterboo was available on day 3, but you started seeing how everybody was starting to, as we got closer, like, people loving Harvey and Travion and Judkins and even Scat, who fell like a little bit. But there was all this Devin Neal from Kansas, like Giddens from Kansas State. There was all these guys, and like the second through the fourth round was prime real estate for that. And given what the Bills' situation was with Cook and the running backs, but also just what they needed on defense, I didn't see anything unless push came to shove significantly.
Well, shove didn't happen. Push didn't happen. We're here. And so now the depth chart's pretty set. You know, they brought in allegedly Elijah Moore's coming in this week, which is funny. We're going to talk about this wide receiver dynamic here in the live show we're about to record, but it's fun to get to talk through the happenings of the draft class and not have to do a stiff, rigid show where we one by one go through every prospect and I have to sit here and pretend that I give a shit about, oh, well, TJ Sanders' hand placement, man. I go, that's what you guys are for over at Cover One. So where can everybody find your upcoming content as you're breaking down everything ahead of training camp and through OTAs and everything else about all these player profiles who are going to make up the 2025 roster? Tell everybody where they can find all your work.
Sure. From a social media standpoint, find me on Twitter at pro__ant. So that's pro2_ANT. Find me on Blue Sky at proant. No underscores there, just PROANT. I host my own show called Disguise Coverage, live every Tuesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern. Film analysis, advanced metrics, discussion, kind of placed at a high level, but also a detailed perspective. And then I also co-host the Cover One Film Room. It depends on what week and what the content is, but it drops either on Mondays or Wednesdays. That show is all film-based.
And what wild narratives you guys want to try to paint against upstanding young men who are great.
It's also crazy, too, because, like, not to be a dick, but, like, to show the work, to be like, here's why I think this, and here's a bunch of film, and everybody be like, no! Like, how come you're picking these plays? What the fuck are you talking about? Because they exist, and there's plenty of sample size of it. Like, you think we're cherry-picked. Whatever, man. To each their own.
I love it, brother.
It's a whiskey sour. It makes me angry.
I like
fuels my fire.
Exactly. I love it. Guys, this has been a lot of fun, but for tonight, we got to get the hell out of here. I'm Drew Gear. That's Chris Kruger. And this has been your Rock Pile Report.